All right, everybody, let me welcome you into the Paul and Jack Yates line of the Fabulous 50s. We're going to start off with 1955, someone who I always recognize as my big brother who helped raise me, Mr. Carl Oliver, part of the YMCA, Mr. Dan Merkins. And we move right along to the class of 1956, Mr. Chester Land, the brother of Carolyn Land Devon, Mr. Bo Barrington, Mr. George Solomon Jr., and Royce Merkins. As we go into the Jack Yates class of 1957, where also the principal Mr. William Holland, Mr. John Solomon, who my big brother, and in 1958 we had Mr. Simon Taylor, and also the great singing artist I can see clearly now, Mr. Johnny Nash. In September of 1958, Jack Yates moved, and they moved to 3703 Sampson, and the building at 2610 Elgin became the second junior high school in Houston. It was called James D. Ryan, which was the first principal of Jack Yates when it opened up in February 1926. Now, as we went into a new school, we also went into with a new principal, Mr. John E. Cardwell, who came all the way from Phyllis Wheatley as a principal to open up the new Jack Yates at 3703 Sampson. And the first class that came out of Jack Yates 3703 was the class of 1959. Mr. Johnny Cobbs, Mr. Gerald Valia, Mr. John Marshall. And then the Roaring 60s started. That's when things started looking up for a lot of blacks. And the second class to come out of there in 1960 was Mr. Raoul, Mr. Charles Square, which is the oldest brother of Chad Square and all the Square brothers. And it's a bunch of squares, but this is the oldest, Mr. Charles Square. And we can't forget about Mr. Horace Pittman, and the man who helped raise me at the YMCA and also was part of the Jack Yates Men breakfast when we started, and he came to every breakfast that we had, Mr. Robert Scotty Jackson. And when we moved into 1961, this is the first class that spent the whole 3 years over at 3703 Sampson, because the first two classes, they came from the old Jack Yates. Now, Mr. Carlton Land, Mr. Joe Molo, which is the older brother of the Molos, as Oren Lee and Buddy Molo, and their sister Elaine Molo, and Maurice Hughes, who is the oldest brother of Carl Hughes and Melvin Skibo Hughes. And we go right into the class of 1963 that really put Jack Yates on the map, because it was they was the class who won the first state championship at 3703 Sampson. And they couldn't have done it without my good friend, my big brother, Sylvester Chubby Checkett Armstrong, and Mr. Roby Radley. As we go into the class of 1964, one of my best friends and one of the best swimmers that ever came out of Jack Yates, Mr. Sterling Stewart. And my other big brother, Mr. Rotley Tankersley, the older brother of John Tankersley and Evelyn Tankersley and Coach Tankersley and Miss Sue Tankersley. That was their oldest son. Mr. Lawrence Hogan, Mr. Eugene Balfour, Mr. Eugene Brackens, Ron the Crook Valia, Oren Lee Molo, Emmett Alexander, the brother of Ray Alexander, Coach Coverton, and also a man who helped us at all the Jack Yates Men breakfast, Mr. Arthur Triplett, and Coach Calvin Klein's son, Calvin Klein Jr. All came out in the class of 1964 and is part of the fallen lines. As we go into the class of 1965, my big brother, my neighbor, and my friend, Mr. Lionel Williams, or should I say Dr. Lionel Williams, who became a dentist, Mr. Jimmy Broussard, Mr. Ronnie Mitchell, better known as Sugar Shack, Mr. Melvin Skibo Hughes, Mr. Gregory Williams, the older brother of Reginald Williams, Mr. Curtis Pittman, the oldest brother of Ralph Pittman, Mr. Ollie Kelly, the class of 1965, and the class of 1966. All of these are personal friends that I knew. Mr. Emil Glenn, Mr. Phelan Curry, Mr. Lucius Blair, all coming out of the class of 1966. And I go to my class of 1967. We got to start off with my good friend, Mr. Leo Taylor, Eddie Hamilton, better known as General Hamilton, and also my good friend who I raised up with and my neighbor, Carl Gap Hughes, Kenneth Motley, Richard Blair, Curtis Boyd, Larry Dobie Bradford. That's Larry Dobie Bradford. Y'all, let's get it straight. Because Dobie was my main man, and I love me some Dobie. And I love me some John Potts. And Don Chandler was always an officer and a gentleman. And what can I say about my good swimming buddy and my good friend, Robert Bumpsy Square. And all of these not only was my classmates, but they was good friends of mine. And I want to make sure that their family know that we are all thinking about them over at Jack Yates. And the class of 1968. Mr. Reginald Williams, who did so much for Jack Yates, man. Every year he donated stuff for scholarships and gave to his class of 1968. We want to all give respect to Reginald Williams. He was the youngest brother of Gregory Williams. And what can I say about Sharon Mitchell, the brother of Renee Mitchell, the twin, and also the younger brother of Ronnie Mitchell. She was Sugar Shack as we know him. And what I couldn't have made it in radio without him. Mr. Baby Dave Felder. Baby Dave, every time I think of the Charlites or any records that you have broke, Marvin Gaye, Inner City Blues, man, all of this bring back memories to us at KYOK, because it was you, Baby Dave, who broke those records. And I know the Charlites just loved you to death, because every Charlite record that was played in Houston for the first time came on your show. Baby Dave Felder. May you rest in peace, my brother. And what can I say about Larry Hamilton? We call him Dewey, which is the brother of General Hamilton and his younger brother, Joe Hamilton. Dew, may you rest in peace, baby. That's what we call the horseshoe curve right there where Wentworth turns into Arbor. And what is the horseshoe curve without you guys, man? You know, you and Ralph Pittman, man, we all had a lot of fun. And oh man, we could go on and on. Also, who we also had a lot of fun with, Bert Evans. Oh man, we had so much love down that horseshoe curve. And we go into the class of 1969. And my good friend, who I loved him as a little brother, Mr. Tommy Hobbs. May you rest in peace, Tommy. Man, you did everything you could to try to help me and try to put the y'all class reunion, but they didn't listen to you, so it is what it is, Tommy. May you rest in peace, brother. But I want to let you know that I think about you all the time, especially when it comes to class of 69. And what can you say about Douglas Riley, better known in our neighborhood as Bud T? May you rest in peace, Bud T. And what can I say about Charles Lil Suds Branch, which is the baby brother of Walter Branch? And we go into the 1970s as we close it out at 3703 Sampson with Mr. Billy Putney and Mr. Floyd Square. Now, one thing that happened in 1964, that was the last class that Dr. John E. Caldwell signed over their diploma, because in 1965, his assistant, Mr. J.R. Alexander, who Dr. Caldwell brought him in when he opened up that school at 3703 Sampson in September 1958, he brought in J.R. Alexander to be his vice principal. And why and how thankful we is for that, because it was Mr. Alexander who put woodshop, the mechanics, all the vocational courses together that you enjoyed over at Jack Gates. It wouldn't be for Mr. Alexander, we wouldn't have had him. And Dr. Caldwell knew that he had that experience to do that. So I just want to let you know this, a little history of Jack Gates. And to all the fallen family of Jack Gates, we love you, man. And if we missed anybody, you know how to get on Facebook. Let us know so we can recognize your family, because we all family at JY for life. Thank you. This is Robert Booley Williams. God bless you. And we will keep you in our prayers, because you're always part of Jack Gates' family, regardless if you finish at 2610 Elgin, whether or not you finish at 3703 Sampson, even if you're a young line and finish at 3650 Alabama. Just remember, it's JY for life. God bless you.